Welcome to Joy in the Breakthrough, a podcast where we'll be talking to a wide range of leaders from different generations and backgrounds, those who have found power in being broken open. I'm Connie Lindsey.
And I'm Anna Valencia. We are your host, and we believe that our challenges can lead to breakthroughs, and we want to share those insights with you.
We hope these stories will inspire you to explore the I'm possible in you.
And with today's guest, I have no doubt that you will find the sisterhood, hope, and inspiration that you're looking for. I'm so honored and privileged to interview my co-host, Connie Lindsey, who has been nothing but the best sister friend I could ask for, and someone who held me down whenever I experienced breaking open to break through. So, Connie, it is an honor. We're doing this.
We're here.
We are here to co-host this pod. And for those listening, we really started this podcast because Connie and I have a deep friendship. And we are always talking to young women and people of color about our experiences, our pivots, our breakthroughs, and sharing, how we got where we are today. And one of the things I heard yesterday, a quote by a parent at a luncheon, said, "Stop meeting parents where they are at, meet them where they dream." And I hope that this podcast can be a place where we can meet our listeners, not where you're at, but where you dream, and share our lessons learned. And so we're using this pod as a platform to maximize our impact.
Indeed.
So I'm going to dive right in because in this podcast, we're not going to do any fluff. We're going to get right to the point. And I want to know, we know so much about you. You're a national leader philanthropist with the Girl Scouts. You were an executive vice president at Northern Trust, a global role where we don't see a lot of women and women of color in those roles. You're a loving wife, a mentor to so many young women coming up in this world, especially to me, and so many young people of color. You are who you say you are. Your actions show who you are. And so I want to know about a couple pivotal moments in your life or breakthroughs that you can recall that has helped shape you to who you are today.
Well, first I want to say, Anna, what a privilege and a joy it is to be on this journey with you. We recall how we got this idea started, and we can talk about that later, but what the whole genesis of this was, and the notion of being authentic, the level of transparency required, and how we can help each other by sharing stories, and the idea of finding joy in the breakthrough. All of us in life experience different times and difficult times, but it is how we move through those times to that joy, that place of joy. And we distinguish the difference between joy and happiness. I heard someone say that happiness depends on what is happening, but joy is an inside job. And so joy comes from the work that we do internally to navigate difficult or trying or challenging times, and then the people with whom we surround ourselves in order to get to that breakthrough. It's not always easy, but once we're on the other side, I believe that we grow, and then we can give even more grace to each other as we understand that. So I think as I think back on my childhood and growing up, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I was a very shy, introverted child. And so my breakthrough came as a Girl Scout. I joined Girl Scouts when I was 10 years old at my church in Milwaukee. And we grew up, we didn't have a lot of financial or material things. And I wanted to join Girl Scouts so desperately. But my mother couldn't afford the uniform at that time. And I was always the child who wanted to please my mother and not cause disruption. And, I'm a peacemaker by nature, but I don't mind troubling the waters for a cause that's really important to me. And I learned that through life. But the breakthrough for me was being able to be transparent and honest and the loving women in my church. I learned the importance of sisterhood and love, certainly from my biological sisters, but other Black women and white women who were a part of our community who poured into us. I often say that they wrote on the tablet of my heart. And what they wrote on the tablet of my heart was unconditional love, the importance of sharing what you have with others, and being a good listener and an advocate for those who might not have or who aren't in the places where we are. And so the pivot and the breakthrough was when they bought that uniform for me. I was able to join that Girl Scout troop in my church, and I found my voice in that place. Because in my Girl Scout troop, our economic status didn't matter. The zip code that I lived in, I learned that it would not dictate my destiny. And so becoming a Girl Scout, having a troop leader, Pearline James, God rest her soul, who said to me, she was the first person who ever said to us, she said to our entire troop, "You matter, you are not what is the matter." So no matter what anybody says about you in life, about the places from which you've come, what your family's economic standing is, it is not important because you matter. You matter to me, you matter to this community, and you matter to God. And as I've grown, Anna, and done the work that I've done, the privilege of working in financial services, I often say to people, net worth is not the same as self-worth. So breaking up into Girl Scouts.
I love that. And that was 10 years old.
10 years old.
So it's so important, I'm a mom, she's 3, that we remember that they're always listening. And even as young as 10, finding your self-worth and what that breakthrough at an age. So there's no age on breakthrough. It can happen any time.
And the power of our words, what we say to ourselves even. What's the first thing that you say to yourself when you wake up in the morning? Is it good God, it's morning, or good morning God?
Yes.
The things that we say about ourselves, that committee in your head that tells you can or can't do something, that increases the fear.
Yes.
The false expectations that appear real once we continue to say that about ourselves. I was joking this morning with you about figuring out what to wear for the podcast.
Yes.
And not allowing that to become bigger than what our mission is. And our mission is to create a pathway for others to see themselves in the conversations that we have with our guests, for them to become comfortable with sharing their stories, because someone listening can see themselves in that dialogue. And stories are so powerful. And our hope and our intention is that they break open and they break through to whatever greatness there is to be for them.
And with lots of joy.
With lots of joy.
Well, I know you were 10 at that moment. And there's also a lot of sadness that comes with a lot of growth, but painful growth that comes through breaking through. There are some times where you fail in small ways or very public ways. But tell me a little bit about how that felt at another pivotal time in your life. How did it feel when the breakthrough was not so easy in your adult life?
I often encourage people today, of course, Kierkegaard said life is lived moving forward, but learned backward. So we get the experience we get the lesson after the experience.
Yes.
And hopefully with wisdom, we learn to ask better questions and get that. But for me, I practice failing forward. How do I learn from the experience? And so that whatever that failure or difficulty might be, how do I move forward from that? And there were a few, I think, in terms of just navigating corporate culture in the organizations and corporations where I've worked, being a Black woman, being in the world of finance. How do I find my voice and assert myself in ways that don't fit the stereotypes and tropes? And we know that people have those, and those are not my problem, but it certainly is an opportunity for me to help people understand in that context what my skills and gifts and talents could do to benefit the strategy of the organization. And my first job out of college was at Wisconsin Bell. They no longer exist because of the divestiture and so on. But I remember a manager saying to me, you're only here because of an EEOC requirement.
Oh.
And that's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Oh, yes.
That you wouldn't be here otherwise. So I just want to see how long you'll be here at the firm, at the company, and how successful you're going to be.
Which that person didn't know that was going to fuel you.
Absolutely.
Did the exact opposite of it, trying to intimidate you. It only fueled you, I'm sure.
He didn't know the village that I came with me. They say I stand as one, but I come
Or your
out
Girl
as I
Scout
stand
belt
with
that you have.
Exactly. I was the first person in my family to graduate college. So I had all of that with me. There was no way I was going to fail. And there was even less of a way that I would allow someone's perception of who I was because of how I looked or presented to determine my success. And what I said to him was, because remember, the person that you're seeing today is several chapters into a life of change and challenge and hope and victory and joy and all of those things. But what I said to him was, my intention is to prove you wrong. Is to prove you wrong. And I can say I definitely did. But it hit. Words have power. Words have impact. Every letter that comes together to form a word. And Scripture tells us, that life and death is in the tongue. And I'm very clear about what I say and how I say it, the weight of every word. So I went through my career at the Bell system at AT&T and came to Chicago as a result of that very successful career. I was asked to move to Chicago to work in the finance department.
So another pivot and
Another
breakthrough.
pivot and breakthrough.
Leaving the safety of your family and support system that really helped support you. Because even, being open and transparent that we are, those words, they just don't always roll off of us. They, we let them sink sometimes. We think about them. We wake up at night or in the morning thinking about them, replaying in our heads. And a lot of women I know and young people of color that struggle with this. And so you taking that big chance, though, to come to Chicago, what was that like?
I saw it as a big opportunity.
So you reframed it.
I reframed it. I saw it as an opportunity. And the way that I was invited to come to work at the headquarters here in Chicago of what would become Ameritech was I was invited by the then treasurer, who was also a sponsor and a mentor. And you and I have talked about this. We all need sponsors, mentors, and coaches. How do we define that? A sponsor talks about you. A coach talks at you, and a mentor talks to you. Each has a role in our career development and in our lives. But that sponsor generally tends to be the person who has the power and the wherewithal to advance our careers or our causes. And so he was a sponsor and a mentor. And a mentor is a trusted advisor, right?
Yes.
The etymology of that word. And so having that opportunity, not knowing what it meant, I was 26 years old. And coming to a new city, all of those things, and being challenged by doing that. It was quite a fascinating, and you're right, at times scary. I was here, new to the city, trying to figure it out, doing a lot of work. But that breaking through to joy on that was being able to establish mastery of that role. Long hours, learning about how things needed to work in the finance department, those investment decisions that we needed to make, and navigating culture. Once again, I was, one of the few women on the team, and certainly the only Black woman who was in the finance area at the company at the time. And so just being able to maintain who I was and hold on to who I wanted to be as a leader, how I wanted to be as a leader, and not losing myself in those kinds of roles and definitions.
I'm Darius Hillman. Joining me on the next edition of In the Arena, the CEO of Discover Financial Services, Roger Hochschild. Take a look.
Thought it was our responsibility. And a lot of companies talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but how many really try and do something meaningful and do it within the construct of their business? Don't do it on the side.
Well, Connie, I know you talked a lot about your corporate world and your experience in navigating those barriers, but I also know that our viewers and listeners, this is a cross-generational conversation for a reason, because what you're saying is really helping me where I'm at right now. And I think where your next pivot and breakthrough is you said, I'm not retiring, I'm rewiring, which I think is a great distinction. So tell me a little bit about this last pivot of rewiring for you.
Big decision. And I chose to call it rewirement. I heard someone gave me a book years ago that said, don't retire, rewire. And I chose to make that word my own for the various reasons. One, I'm not tired, so there's nothing to go back to. But this was a natural point in my work life where I could pivot to what I call a portfolio life. The passion that I could use to invest time, talent, and treasure in things that I care about, but also the things that I've been doing all along while working in my career. And you and I have had lots of conversations about our roles and titles and what that all means. And rewirement works because I often say that is the work that I did, but it was not who I am. It didn't take anything away from the commitment that I had to my career and my work at Northern Trust as head of corporate responsibility, global diversity, equity, and inclusion, and community investment and development, and all the leadership roles I'd had prior to this last one. But rewirement meant I'm defining now for myself how I can take purpose and passion and apply that to things that I care about in life. One of the boards that I serve on is the American Cancer Society. We're doing a lot of work around health equity. That ties into the work I did in corporate America, both from understanding the financial dynamics, the social determinants of health, and how I can impact that in a positive way. What can I do to then help that mission and that work, and then having the privilege of continuing to work with people like you as friends and mentors, and anything that I can do to help people navigate through that next stage. And the joy that I get from that is almost undefinable. I have lots of energy. And so I say we can infect or affect people with our attitudes. And I want to infect people with this joy that you and I have gotten to experience and the relationship that we have of sisterhood, of being able to talk about our breakthroughs and our pivots in a way that allows us to hold safe space for each other. Because that's so important. When you and I share information, it's not so that somebody can run and tell that. Mm-hmm. It's so that we can help support one another, up to and including how we care for ourselves during those breakthrough moments. Once we've broken open, how do we guide ourselves to that path back to joy, which I believe is a natural state and a state to which we can all aspire. No matter what's happening, we can still have that kind of joy that is rooted in something so much bigger than our external circumstances.
And no one can take away.
Absolutely.
Because it is your internal.
Absolutely.
And I love that because this whole podcast, how we manifested this, it was just a conversation about how we wanted to bring joy into our lives and to others. And something that you said that stuck so with me when we'll talk about in another episode is you said, do not let, your career dictate your self-worth. Right. And I think we were at this symposium together last October, and we ran into a lot of people that were rewiring, and a lot of the men, not trying to hate, they were like lost. They had tied their self-worth to this long career at this corporation, and they almost didn't know who they were. And you were like, I'm good. You actually have too much. You got a lot of joy happening that I can't even get on your schedule anymore because you're so busy. But I think that's so important, at the age that I am right now, I'm in my late 30s, is that I need to stop and self-reflect and look at, okay, Anna, don't tie your self-worth to a career. Because if that career disappoints you or brings you sadness, that's what you're going to feel when I have so much other beauty surrounding me that I'm refusing to look at in my life.
And we want people to understand, people who are listening to us, careers are awesome. I had an amazing career. I had decades.
And the career brought you joy.
And the career brought me joy.
Yes.
What I'm saying when I say it doesn't define who you are, there are behaviors and skills and all of those things that we pour into that. I think about some of the physicians that I've known in my life and know today who are amazing people. It's, yes, bring all of that to it. But when that time, that season of your life is done, take all that you've learned. Know that you did that in a way that couldn't be done by anybody else. And then move into that next season with the expectation that there is much joy on the other side as there was when you had that career.
We're going to our tips and techniques section now, segment of the show, where I think she's dropped a lot of gems and tips and techniques already, because Connie always does. You want to get a notepad when you're talking to her. But for all of you listening today, we really want to drop some tips and techniques that have helped us get closer to that dream, right? To get closer to what we believe is our dream. And so I would love to hear from you for our audience. What is a tip or technique you can give them today?
I have to drop a few, so we'll go through them in rapid succession. The first is no is a complete sentence.
Oh, I like that.
I get asked to do a lot of things, and I wish I could do all the things that I'm asked to do. But when I say no, I generally don't try to explain a lot of it. I'll just say no. And I do it respectfully. If there's a reason to say, no, I'm otherwise committed. But learning to say no and sticking with that and then having no guilt.
Yes.
Number two, making sure that I have white time on my calendar, being able to dream my big dreams or create or write or whatever that is so that I'm not so overly committed. I know usually when you call me, it's like, Connie, what are you doing? You're in meeting after meeting. But I promise you, I do have white time on the calendar. Third is taking care, and not in any order, but certainly third is taking care of our physical presence. If we don't fill ourselves, we can't pour from an empty cup. So taking the time to do that. My faith is the foundation of everything in my life. It informs my decisions, how I relate and move through the world. So I invest and make sure I take time to meditate and pray and to always find something that is uplifting. And serving others, Anna, that's my joy.
Yes.
Being able to serve and give to others. So those are just a few of the things, tips, tools, and techniques. And it takes discipline and to practice, to perfect that practice in a way that there isn't a day that I don't pray several times a day, but certainly I've invested
we have that in common,
exactly,
our faith.
Exactly.
Our faith has always been our grounding. It's
Exactly.
what we cling to,
For sure.
especially in storms or chaos in our lives. So I'm going to give our viewers, I'm going to make you come back. So I'm going to give you a tip and technique One that I find really to go onto your white calendar is I read this book by Carey Nieuwhof maybe 2 years ago, At Your Best. And one of the things he called were priority hijackers. And so he said calendar space that's not calendared is a setup to fail because someone's going to come in and grab that calendar space and hijack it and take you away from your priorities. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought blank calendar space was good. So I actually put on my calendar rest and family days to block that. And my team knows that, most Sundays are family rest days on Friday afternoons because I still have the sitter. I try to go, do something for myself. And I think that's so important. Prayer and meditation time as well. I block that every morning. My husband knows not to knock on that office door because at home I will do it. Today I had to do it in the salon because I was getting my hair done and I missed it this morning. So wherever I can fit in that 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And to your point, gratitude.
For sure.
One of our guests that we'll have, Rush Masajoni, wrote this book, Brave Not Perfect. And one of the things that helped her out of a big failure was gratitude. Because when you can, maybe three things in the morning I try every morning, and even on the tough days to find gratitude. Is it the sun shining? Exactly. Is it that grateful that you can put your feet on the floor that morning?
I actually have a jar at home that says gratitude on the outside and little cards. It was given to me as a gift by a dear girlfriend.
I love that.
So every day I take one of those cards and I write something that I'm grateful for and to fill that jar. And it's in a prominent place. When I'm Zooming from home, sometimes I think people see it. And it says gratitude. And I have these little cards. And sometimes I'll wake up and on days when it's a little more challenging, grateful to be alive.
Yes.
Grateful for breath. Grateful for this moment of which I am cognizant that I'm here. Yes. Fully here, fully present. Gratitude in everything that I do. And you're right, that's key.
Yes. And I love listening to podcasts and books and reading and learning other people's journeys and what they've used. And sometimes you take a little bit of here and a little bit of there. So we hope this pod can be that for others. We're going to go to our Say Less segment with the Connie Lindsey. And Connie dropped some gems and knowledge on me and our executive producer, Anna D., which you'll meet on this show. She's going to be on our podcast. And what Connie taught us is that you can say more with actually saying less. And so, Connie, I'd love for you, she's going to end the show, take us away on Say Less.
So our word, say less, and you and I were talking, and one of the things that, I don't set New Year's resolutions, I set an intention. And so my intention for 2023, and I'm living part of it right now, was to live my life in crescendo. There was a book written or finished by Stephen Covey's daughter, and they talked about this crescendo life. And if you're familiar with music, in music crescendo, you gradually get louder. It doesn't start out fully loud, but it's gradual. And so my crescendo life means that I will increase the amount of love and care and compassion in the projects and the work that I'm doing. Gradually increase that so that when my life is done, I'll be all used up. There won't be anything left that I will believe I needed to do or had to do. So in crescendo season, which is that season for me now, it is gradually getting louder and increasing the volume, the veracity, and the focus that I have on those things that I care about with gratitude, breaking through to joy every single day.
Crescendo. I love that. I love that.
Time moved so fast, Anna. Thank you for interviewing me and being in conversation and sisterhood with me today. I wish we could have been here all day.
I know, but my babysitter would have killed me, so I have to get home. But please, we hope you tune back in to our podcast because we have so much more and amazing guests coming up.
Thank you for joining Joy in the Breakthrough.